This media will be a high level overview of the Ascent version 2.2 features and benefits, more specifically related to the GX side, but we'll also cover what you're viewing right now, which is our testing queue or home screen. The home screen includes the testing queue, device dashboard, and patient search. On the testing queue, filters have been changed and enhanced from version 1.4 to version 2.2. You can see those added testing filters here, and you can also go ahead and you can hide filters to be able to clean up your testing queue. Patient search remains ultimately the same. You can see what can be searched by hovering over the patient search box. In addition to that, the device dashboard is seen here. This lets you know device status, cal status, environmentals. If you have a body box, that would be shown here, but would also include the environmentals from any interface Davis Vantage View. If no environmental monitor is interfaced, you would not see that here. We also have external devices on the bottom. I do have a bike connected, and for this recording, it's set up to communicate with Mortara ECG. So it's showing all in green, which is a good thing. But what I'm going to do just to demonstrate when the bike is turned off, it immediately goes red, and upon opening the software, the user would be alerted that possibly they forgot to turn their bike on. In Breeze Suite, what would happen is you would get all the way to the test tab to start the test. The software would sit and spin. Ultimately, the user would get a hardware communication error, could precipitate a call to our technical support team. So this area will hopefully help, again, prepare the user for the test, and then ultimately maybe even minimize calls going forward, and so on and so forth. You can also test the device from the screen. And if we had a treadmill connected, we would see that here. If a patient was connected with the ECG transmitter, we would even see a real-time heart rate coming through. Well, it's probably going to be uncommon. Ascent does allow for easy switching or easy configuration. If somebody wanted to connect the same computer to, say, an Ultima and their body box, they could switch between the two devices here. Just to show on the device dashboard is the power management scheduler. That is still a nice feature to be able to call out as it relates to automatic start and warm up time, and then hibernation. On the external devices tab, we have a number of different selections. These can be uh, analog signals. It can be RS-232 or USB signals, like we're communicating with the bike, or it could be something else like Bluetooth Low Energy. So I just wanted to highlight, if we actually did want to connect to any heart rate monitor, any heart rate strap, call it from Polar or whatever, that uses the BLE protocol, Bluetooth Low Energy, you'd actually be able to go in and find that device. And here's just the Bluetooth devices in our area, one being a TV. But if it were a Zephyr, for example, you would also be able to see that there, or the Polar, or so on. So we do have a bit of flexibility in terms of BLE device communication, specifically related to heart rate and other areas. One area that comes up is the transcutaneous output, or it's coming up because people are talking about it more and more. So we do interface with that signal. It is an analog signal, but ultimately it allows for the dynamic display of dead space to tidal volume ratio, or VDVT. So this is a nice feature that people have been asking about for the last 4 to 6 years. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up a patient. This isn't the cleanest patient file, but it's a demo file with exercise flow volume loops, which is why I wanted to highlight that. So if I come in here, we can certainly come into this area where we can do trending if we have multiple visits. I did want to highlight on the trending side, that is all configurable, but we now have the ability to overlay VO2s. From one test to the next, or other variable configurations. You can see all the variables that we could go ahead and overlay for trending of data. Colors, any colors related to Ascent, it's far greater flexibility than Breeze Suite ever had. So whatever color that user can imagine they want to see a variable in, chances are we have that. We also have other visit information that can be updated, or we have the test, or you can even add a visit or adjust the demographics. But we'll go right into this. Pre-spirometry has already been completed for this test. Uh, with this testing screen here, I want to highlight a couple of different things. In the actual testing screen, you can go ahead and you can drag and drop to be able to rearrange the variables for that specific test only as you see fit. But that is a nice feature. We will touch on F5 options to be able to organize those a bit later. We have our gauges. These can be configured. Ultimately, they can help a user look at normal versus abnormal response throughout the course of a CPAT test. This is a subset of variables. It's not all of the variables. There are ways that the user can configure all of these gauges, not only for CPAT testing, but also for resting testing with a mask, mouthpiece, or FaceTime to be able to have that. These gauges can also be configured to have the colors or not display at all. I should note it is 6 gauges or no gauges. Graphs and tabular data can be modified. I just want to highlight graph properties works essentially the same way as in Breeze. It's just far updated. And again, just touching on whatever color they can imagine for their variable, they can have that. The GX script is hidden. The idea was the settings page was, or the settings tab in Breeze was always somewhat intimidating to users. So we're not showing that. However, we can allow for the user to access that in the event they want to reconfigure their steady state detection. And we do have the ability to do that in the resting phase during an exercise test, which is new and different. Um, Here we don't have a selected patient interface, so I can have that and save it to make sure it takes that dead space into account. You can also change the protocol here if necessary. If it is a treadmill test, and I shouldn't say protocol. You can see it there. However, you can change that here. Um, so that ramp rate for this case is an auto-calculated ramp rate, I believe. And the nice thing about Ascent is during testing, you can actually change ramp rate real time. It does affect the linearity, might make AT, RC, or VT1, VT2 difficult to find. However, you can do that to be able to have that flexibility within the test. Treadmill protocol cannot be changed during the test. We have a number of different icons here on the right hand side. I just want to touch on a few of them that are active here. If we had existing ECG that was connected to this patient, we could review that with this icon. This icon right here is where we can go ahead and we can display our ECG settings. External device communication can be accessed from here. If something you don't want to talk to it, say the pulse ox, for example, during training, you can remove that, similar to how those are removed in Breeze Suite on the settings tab. Gas exchange adjust is our AT adjustment, and AT and RC could be called VT1 and VT2, but you can see here we have multiple adjustments, AT and RC. We also have multiple methods. V-slope might be a common method. We can associate that with different guides, as you can see here. And then we can go ahead and adjust and have a reference point, but we can always clear and refine that reference point if need be. Averaging methods can also be changed. Again, you can reset and save. The exercise window is where that start of exercise line and start of recovery line can be moved. Think of this as the window tab within Breeze Suite. You can also create exclusions. Difference between Breeze Suite is you can create those exclusions and drag those around. You cannot delete any data from the software, but you can exclude it from being reported, very similar to Breeze. You can also do VO2 peak or max adjustment as well. Again, you can click and drag that, and you can go ahead and then, if you did not like it, clear and refine that value again, changing the averaging method if you would like. I did want to touch on this AT graph as well, that we don't only have the one graph view, but a two, four, and even a nine panel. And I want to touch on the nine panel because I believe that this is somewhat unique, um, in that as you move, and of course, keep in mind, some are plotted against time, some are plotted against VO2 or whatever. All of these are user definable as well. But looking at this, you can click and drag, and the AT will respond on all various panels. This is our curve fits functionality. This is an area you should highlight. This will be important for a lot of providers or clinicians that are interacting and interpreting data from our software. For CPET specifically, we have defaults built in. However, you can, or the user can, create new curve fits. They can do this from here, or they can do this from the admin tool. But that curve fit functionality can be named whatever they would like. You can define the variables, the start and the end windows, which you can see are substantial, and then the various curve fit relationships that we have. The most common ones will be linear relationships for VO2 work rate relationship, and for VE VCO2, depending on if it's from the start up to AT, RC, or the full exercise window. The ExoScript functionality is greatly increased within the Ascent software. This is the base one. We kind of built that off of Breeze. However, ExoScript, various configurations can be created with logic and descriptions within here, similar to how we build the auto interp stuff. And you can have multiple exer scripts, and for training zones, that is all user definable. You can have 100 training zones if you'd like, of various colors, and can be included on a report. One thing I forgot to highlight here, which I want to, is that uh, various areas that this can be leveraged is exercise prescription for healthy normals, weight management training programs. Look at cardiac rehab or pulmonary rehab programs, where potentially they want to give the patient a takeaway in terms of programming to use at home or whatever. The possibilities are kind of limitless here. So this is a nice feature. And then we still have EOV in here as well. This is something that comes up a lot with heart failure. So if asked, this feature does exist. We do have references, and you can contact the product management team for further info if you would like. There's also information in the manual as well. That said, I did want to access F5 settings, still a thing, and I just want to touch on the GX test. Obviously, with general settings, you have the ability to adjust your fonts and backgrounds, light or dark. I know that there is that going on, and also unit settings. A lot of the areas of PF uh, um, configuration have already been covered or are very similar to 1.4. GX test tabular data. One thing I wanted to highlight, the click and drag does not work. However, if I wanted to put breathing reserve in liters per minute right next to RER, I could add that in. I can move that up or down, and then I can move that out. So envision this from a standpoint of, in Breeze Suite, you always had to work from left to right. You always had to take a screenshot. Here, you don't have to do that, and you go ahead and you have the multiple test types that we have in place to configure that from. It should be noted that F5 settings are user-based settings. So they are, if one user logs in versus another, they may be configured to see different things within the same site and or organization. GX test is where the gauge selection boxes are for showing them or not showing the colors, or etc. Configuring the gauges. Again, those gauges can exist for rest and exercise. This is a relatively complex tool. However, there is some information in the user manual about this. We have defaults, but the user can come in and modify based on their preferences. All of these events can be shown or not shown. There are little click boxes that can be accessed during the test to be able to add those events. Those events can also be added post-test multiple ways. a lot easier than Breeze, which I'll highlight. And you can also adjust your graph layouts. We're going to go with 2. So then we can save that just so you can see how it changes the data. Exercise flow volume loops is a nice looking feature. I will highlight a couple of efforts. Within these efforts, you can double click and you can adjust the end inspiratory lung volume point, or the IC value, just as you can with Breeze. But you have these nice graphics to be able to highlight how that changes. For example, the end expiratory lung volume point or end inspiratory lung volume point. We did have these variables in Breeze Suite. They were just displayed with a different label. These graphs can also be modified and adjusted just as the other graphs can within Breeze, and you can adjust line thickness. I did also want to highlight that adding an event is possible at any time during the test. We do have blood data, so there is actually a lot more built into that blood data. We've been asked by a lot of our cardiac catheterization labs if we integrate with hemodynamic systems. Long story short, we don't, because those systems don't have communication protocols built to do so. However, we do have a lot of those invasive measurements from hemodynamic systems already built into the software as variables, so those can be manually entered and included on a report. Reporting is right here. We have a number of defaults you can preview from this. You can also mark the test complete. This one has been marked complete. So by clicking on this icon, it would bring you to the review screen. However, if the visit is not complete, this would generate a summary view for the user to see. They could also enter the interpretation, return to the home screen, etc. You can add tests if you forget to add tests within that. You can access trending, the scorecard, uh, many possibilities there. I'm going to jump over to the admin tool. The admin tool is the weeds. Here's where all the configuration is. Everything related to the organization, staff, and roles, workstations are all here. I did want to highlight for the GX predicted authors, we do have some additional authors that we've added. A lot of our pediatric sites are, sorry, not pediatric sites, but others around the world have asked us for various things like ship to be entered, which we imported via Breeze Suite before, but we already have that built in, along with citations. You can see the variables that these predicted authors have. Friend is a common one that our customers are also requesting. Predicted sets kind of function the same way. You can see we have many derived predicteds. You can have multiple predicted sets and set your age ranges appropriately. I should note that with anything of this, whether you create protocols or scripts or whatever, the is active box, that's critical to being checked. In addition to that, we have this various icons here where you can create a copy. Notice we can't modify the defaults, but you can create a copy of the defaults to be able to modify that. Major difference between that and Breeze Suite, because in Breeze Suite we had no idea what our defaults really were, and now we will with Ascent going forward. The auto interp can be leveraged. We have a couple of different ones for gas exchange. We have a very simplified one, then we have an extended one. The extended one and the simplified one, the reference for that is the Principles of Exercise Testing and Interpretation textbook, or essentially the Wasserman textbook. So we have those in addition to the most up-to-date PF with and without the Zephyr valve. The patient review statuses can be changed. Those labels can. You can mark them to be visible or not visible. Here's the reporting section. This could be an entire module on its own. I did want to highlight the export options. You can have a lot more flexibility in terms of the file name format for that, which will be important in some cases. Um, Again, with a lot of these, you can create a copy of the defaults and then do modification. But with this, you can adjust fonts, you can adjust multiple different things. It really is a very robust reporting tool that will allow us to meet the needs of most, if not all, of our customers when it comes to reporting. Exercise protocols. This is a bit different. We're showing graphs. In terms of, for example, the bike, you now have the ability to apply wattage to a warm up stage. You can also put ramp stages in with steady state stages. So a lot of flexibility there. You can see Bruce protocol. We can have that. I'm going to go to a copy though, because here is where we can modify. And in modify, we can have some of those various prompts or ECG prints. I don't have this set up to be an ECG protocol at this time, but you can modify that here. For the bike test, we have this RPM threshold. The user will see something in the software. If the patient goes below or above the thresholds, it will prompt the user with an arrow to remind the patient to either increase their RPMs or decrease them. Here's the ExerScript functionality that I mentioned. I created a copy already, but it's all based off of conditions and statements, just like the auto interp section is. So the conditions have operators associated with them, greater than or equal to, so on and so forth. You can modify that as well as the statements that may fire and have any dynamic expressions associated with them. So very similar to that. However, the heart rate zones are the areas that I mentioned. I added a bunch down below. You can see how you can set the heart rate percentages. You can name them, provide a description, and pick your color. GX script modification is within here. Again, the checkbox is active. Our defaults can't be modified but can be copied, and you can adjust everything from protocol, additional test functions within that, like the flow volume loops, etc., the steady state parameter, and then any external devices you're communicating with. GX tests is where the averaging is adjusted. This makes it global or organization based. A lot of issues that we had with Breeze throughout the years was people not understanding the various averaging methods and configurations and how all of those could be different. So complaints about the VO2 on their time down not matching their summary. One was using, say, 30-second averaging, the other was using mid 507. Uh, it's math and it creates differences in numbers. So you have that here also allows the organization to define an AT detection method and then also be able to select how the breaths that are discarded from the EXFVL, if they want to discard any breaths to essentially keep their data smoother. You can hover over any of those informations to be able to information symbols in the software to get that. You can also select to record all title breaths. That is a lot of title breaths, so keep that in mind. Test variables based on the test type can be configured. I'll just highlight here that again, you can change the display name. You do have the flexibility to do that along with decimal places. Custom variables is new. You can do this for both PF and GX. You can build equations and name them. You can use essentially any variable that we have available to be able to build that equation. So this in this current version of Ascent, I mentioned TCP/CO2. You would be able to build a VDVT variable with TCP/CO2 in here. In the future, going forward, in future versions of Ascent, we'll have the ability to do that automatically. Various demographic variables here. That's body surface area, ideal body weight, and then BMI. You can modify the equations that are used within here, which is essentially what the user would want. There may be increased flexibility with this area in the future, but time will tell. We still have our aux data fields, various diagnoses. Keep in mind that one of the things that Breeze Sheet never had was cardiac diagnoses. We now have that in here with Ascent in addition to the pulmonary function. GX curve fits management, again, very, very important. Allows you to go ahead and build a curve fit relationship to be able to include on a report. You can have multiple curve fit relationships with multiple different values you can display on the report. Again, very powerful tool. I think will be very, very important going forward. GX events, I did want to highlight if we have users that have used competitive software in the past and they refer to AT as VT1 and want to call it that, you can modify the labels for those specific events that would occur. And in this case, if they wanted to call not VO2 max, but say VO2 peak, you can make that adjustment. Symptoms can be added and races. Not only are there more options here, but you can also add various races as need be. And that covers essentially the Ascent software. I did want to highlight the most important thing is the About Help section. The help right here is our not only operator manual, which exists right here, but also install manual and a lot of professional guideline statements for our customers to have available at their fingertips. Thank you.